In this lecture, you will learn what a proxy pattern is. If you are working for a software company as a developer or even a tester, you already know what a proxy server is. You, from your developer machine or a testing machine, when you make calls over to the internet, when you are trying to connect to the internet to download a library, you will have to go through a proxy server which your company would have set up. This proxy server is responsible for connecting to the internet, downloading the required libraries, and then handing them over to your dev machine. So this proxy acts as if it is the internet or it is a placeholder. In place of the real object, we use a proxy object for various reasons. The first reason could be a remote proxy. When we work with web services or enterprise Java beans, we use remote proxies. In case of web services, whether it is SOAP or REST, we have a provider which is located on a remote machine, and then we have a web service client which is totally on a different machine. Now this web service client uses client code or stubs that get generated which act as a remote proxy. The web service client makes calls onto the web service proxy. It uses the remote proxy, and this remote proxy is responsible for connecting to the remote web service, getting the response, and then hand that response back to the client. The client is not even aware that he is making calls onto a local proxy. He thinks that he is making a call against the web service which is running somewhere, but the web service proxy makes our life a lot easier. It will take care of all the connection and all that for us. Another type of proxy is a virtual proxy, which is useful while working with tools like Hibernate, Spring, etc. These tools internally use a virtual proxy. For example, ORM tools like Hibernate can use a virtual proxy to do lazy loading from the database. So lazy loading is a concept where the entire information need not be loaded from the database right away, but it can be loaded lazily as the application needs it. For example, here we have a customer and his orders. So the order information of the customer need not be loaded right away when the customer is required. Only the customer related information like his ID, first name, last name, email, etc. will be loaded initially, and then the order information will be loaded when we try to use that information from the customer. When you say customer.getOrders, at that point the orders will be lazily loaded from the database. So tools like Hibernate can internally create a proxy for our customer class and do this lazy loading on the fly. So the client will get an immediate response with the customer details, and the order details will be fetched later on, improving the performance of our application. So that's virtual proxy. Another type of proxy is a security proxy, which is straightforward. Instead of directly accessing the actual object, in between the client and the actual object, there will be a security proxy which is responsible for checking for the security, authentication, authorization, etc. Only once the client passes that, it will be able to make the calls to the actual object and get the response back. So in the next few lectures, we will explore how to implement a virtual proxy. Once you understand that concept, you can work with any other type of proxies. Simply remember that a proxy is something that comes in place of the actual object.